I am on a personal mission to read a book from every single country in the world. The reason for this is because I think that storytelling is such an interesting craft. And if you only read books written originally in your native language and by people from the same country as you, you don't get to experience the full scope of what storytelling can be. Reading books in translation, reading books from around the world, decolonizing and diversifying my own reading has introduced me to so many different ways of telling stories. And since graduating from my literature degree, I've been thinking a lot about the education system and the stories that the system tells, but also the stories that it doesn't tell. The voices that it represents and also the voices that it doesn't. And I kind of want to fix the gaps in my knowledge. However, it's hard to identify what you don't know. And so I wanted to welcome you to a new series that I am going to be making, where I am going to spotlight and highlight and celebrate a book from every country in the world. I'm going to take it continent by continent, starting with Europe, but hopefully by the end of this year I'll have a video like this for each continent in the world. And I hope that this helps you to find new books that might be so interesting to you, but you may not have heard of. Maybe they don't stock it in your local bookshop. Maybe you haven't heard about these books in the media or on book social media. Maybe you've never heard someone celebrate books from your native country. Well, we're going to try and fix that with this series. And I, for one, am very excited. And I really wanted to give you a mix of contemporary books that are trending right now, as well as classic books, modern classics that are revered in these countries and in the world at large and in the literary landscape. So there's going to be a mix of old and new, contemporary and classic, well-known cult classic authors, as well as debut novelists. It's going to give range. One thing you will get is range. So we're going to go through them alphabetically. So these are books from every country in Europe. And if you thought this was it, you are wrong, my friend, because there's also this pile and this stack and also this one. I don't know why I did it like that. That made no sense. This is a series I've wanted to make for the longest time. I'm so buzzing about this. So let's get grooving. I also wanted to say that I always think it's so important to spotlight the incredible work that translators do. And so if you go down to the description box of this video, you'll be able to find all of the translator information for each of these books, if there is one. And I'll also leave the full list of books, the countries that they're from, the author names down there as well. So it's super easy for you to find. You've kind of got this big index of books, and I think it's going to be an absolute treasure trove of amazing literature. First up, we have Albania. This is A Girl in Exile. This is by one of Albania's most prolific writers, Ismail Kadare. I read his book A Dictator Calls, but I'm excited to read another one by the same writer. Actually, very sadly, Ismail Kadare died this morning, and so it's more important than ever now to celebrate his work, celebrate his legacy, and read books by this immensely talented writer who was the first ever winner of the International Booker Prize. This book was the winner of the English Pen Award, a chilling, humane, and strangely beautiful work, says The Independent. When a girl is found dead with a signed copy of Rudy and Steffa's latest book in her possession, the author finds himself summoned for an interview by the party committee. Unable to guess what transgression he has committed, Rudian goes to meet his interrogators. He has never met the girl in question, but he does remember signing the book. As the influence of a paranoid regime steals up on him, Rudian finds himself swept along on a surreal quest to discover what really happened to the mysterious girl to whom he wrote the dedication, to Linda B. That is A Girl in Exile. Next we have Andorra. This is The Teacher of Cheops by Albert Salvadó. This is the history of the parents of Cheops, who built the largest and most impressive pyramid of all. It is also the story of Sadum, a slave who became Cheops' teacher, the highest priest Ramosi, and how the first pyramid came to be built. Everything is written in the stars. Most of us live our lives unaware of it. Some can read the stars and see their destiny, but very few people learn to write in the stars and change that destiny. Anne Morgan from The Guardian says that finding a good novel in translation from the tiny state of Andorra was always going to be tricky, but you're in for a pleasant surprise. Salvadó has certainly done his homework. The book is painstakingly researched. By and large, the level of detail and historical knowledge is well handled. The text itself felt professional and slick. This is a highly readable light novel, powerful flashes of insight into human greed, pride, and ambition. So that is The Teacher of Cheops. Armenia did not come to play with the Grey House. This book is an absolute brick. I can't believe how huge it is. The cover is kind of giving me Howl's Moving Castle vibes. But let's see. In this house, rules of the outside do not apply, and disabilities aren't liabilities. The Grey House is an astounding tale of how what others understand as liabilities can be leveraged into strengths. Bound to wheelchairs and dependent on prosthetic limbs, the physically disabled students living in the house are overlooked by the outsides. Not that it matters to anyone living in the house, a hulking old structure that its residents know is alive. From the corridors and crawl spaces to the classrooms and dorms, the house is full of tribes, tinctures, scared teachers, and laws, all seen and understood through a prismatic array of teenagers' eyes. But student deaths and mounting pressure from the outsides put the time-defying order of the house in danger. As the tribe leaders struggle to maintain power, they defer to the awesome power of the house, attempting to make it through days and nights that pass in ways that clocks and watches cannot record. That sounds fascinating. This is by Mariam Petrosyan and sounds like one for fans of like House of the Cerulean Sea, books that celebrate people who sometimes find themselves on the social margins. In this book, they are the centre of gravity, and the people who are not like them are the outsiders. So that is The Grey House. From Austria, we have The Tobacconist. This is by Robert Seethaler. It's described as tender, devastating, complex, ambitious, moving, essential reading for the early years of the 21st century. One thing about me, if you say the book is devastating, I will be reading it. He's the author of 5 novels. He has been shortlisted for the International Booker Prize in 2016. Told with a dry wit that enhances rather than disguises the sadness of the story, The Tobacconist is a touching miniature of an ordinary life irrevocably altered by the larger forces of history, says the Sunday Times. There's actually no blurb on here, so I'm just gonna quickly Google a top-line description of what this book is about, because they really just said, let the book speak for itself. Okay, it's a tender, heartbreaking story of one young man and his friendship with Sigmund Freud during the Nazi occupation of Vienna. 17-year-old Franz journeys to Vienna to apprentice at a tobacco shop. Can you see my Freud just here, or is it just out of shot? I have my Freud, Sigmund Freud being the Austrian kind of founder of psychoanalysis. But I think this is going to be really interesting that Freud is going to be fictionalized as a character in this novel. So that is The Tobacconist. Okay, this book is called The Orphan Sky. It's by Leya. Poignant and impressive. This is from Azerbaijan. She is a good daughter of the Communist Party. That's all that matters in Azerbaijan in 1979. Leya shows her loyalty any way she can, how her fingers dance across the piano in competition, how she adores the ancient streets of Baku, how she recites a party pledge with fervour. Then she is ordered to spy on a music shop suspected of treacherous Western influences, and suddenly being a good communist is no longer enough. Now she dreams of being a hero. But Leya didn't expect the complication of the painter who owns the shop. His jazz music, vibrant art, and pointed opinions crack open the world she's been living in, and the shock tumbles Leya into confusion. Just when she decides to follow her heart, her comrades force her to make an impossible choice. Wow, set at the crossroads of Turkish, Persian and Russian cultures under the red flag of communism in the late 1970s, The Orphan Sky lyrically reveals one woman's struggle to find her place in the world. Oh my god. I was like speechless. The Orphan Sky sounds amazing. Moving into the B's, this is Red Crosses from Belarus. It's by Sasha Filipenko. She expertly links past and present, building a bridge between intimacy and otherness. An extraordinary novel with an ingenious narrative technique that readers will find irresistible. Tell me more. One struggles against forgetting, while the other would like nothing better. In a novel full of heart and humanity that tells the story of an unexpected friendship between an old woman and her young neighbour, Sasha Filipenko combines a heartwarming tale of human connection with the history of modern Russia, from the Bolshevik Revolution to the present day. Little by little, the old woman and the young man forge an unlikely friendship, sharing their joys and sadness, recounting their triumphs and their losses, deciding together they will not, cannot forget. Ooh, okay. Cool. This is The Melting by Lize. This is a book from Belgium. What if you could take revenge on an entire village? In 1988, in the small Flemish village of Bovenmere, only 3 children are born: Laurens, Pim, and Eva. They become inseparable, and their friendship is the solace Eva seeks from her loveless family life. But with adolescence comes a growing awareness of their sexuality. In the summer before they begin high school, the 3 musketeers find their paths diverging. Driven by their newly found desires, the boys come up with a cruel game. Every day they ask a different local girl a riddle Eva invented. For each wrong guess, they extract a forfeit. In the hopes of befriending Eliza, a haughty girl from the city, Eva reveals the answer to the riddle with unexpected and disastrous consequences. Then, 13 years after that summer that Eva is desperately trying to forget, she is returning home. This time, she's prepared. She's ready to settle the score. Jesus. Spit knows no fear. It is we, the readers, that are left trembling. I am so ready for that. Eliza said, girl, so confusing. Let's work it out on the remix. This book is from Bosnia. It's called Catch the Rabbit. It's by Lana Bastasic, and this is the description. It's been 12 years since inseparable childhood friends Leya and Sarah have spoken, but an unexpected phone call thrust Sarah back into a world she left behind, a language she's buried, and painful memories that rise unbidden to the surface. Interesting that this one and the book before are both about that kind of homecoming, going back to a place where you have, I guess, unfinished business. Leya's magnetic pull hasn't lessened, despite the distance between Dublin and Bosnia or the years of silence imposed by youthful misunderstanding, and Sarah finds herself returning home, driven by curiosity and guilt. Embarking on a road trip from Bosnia to Vienna in search of Leya's exiled brother Armin, the two travel down the rabbit hole of their shared past and question how they've arrived at their present, disparate realities. A confident, carefully drawn portrait of female friendship in the fallout of war. Another girl so confusing coded book. Okay, this next book is called Time Shelter. This is the first Bulgarian book to win the International Booker Prize. It won the prize last year. It's by Georgi Gospodinov. I was very lucky to get to interview Georgi at the International Booker Prize this year, which I get to host the live stream of, which is like the privilege of my life, and I love doing it. So I'm very excited to read his book because he sold it to me. Really, 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 really. In Time Shelter, the enigmatic Gostin opens a clinic for the past that offers a promising treatment for Alzheimer's sufferers. Each floor reproduces a decade in minute detail, transporting the patients back in time. But as the rooms become more convincing, an increasing number of healthy people seek out the clinic as a time shelter. They hope to escape from the horrors of their present day, a development that results in an unexpected conundrum when the past begins to invade the present. That is Time Shelter. That is Bulgaria. Before I jump into the next book, I wanted to let you know that today's video is very, very, very kindly brought to you by Squarespace. And Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building a website or an online brand. With Squarespace, you do not need any coding experience. You don't need to be an expert web developer because they have incredible templates. And these templates allow you to customize them, make something unique, and bring your vision to life. But it's easy. Built into Squarespace is the ability to create a blog so you can share what's going on behind the scenes. There's an email sign-up list that you can create. Your customers can get flexible payments, and Squarespace actually has incredible SEO AI. That means you can optimize your website for search engines. People can actually find the work that you have done. So if that sounds great to you, you can head to squarespace.com right now for a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch your beautiful new website or online brand, you can use the code JackEdwards at squarespace.com/JackEdwards to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. You're welcome. Thank you, Squarespace. Love you, Squarespace. And now, the next book and the next country. Baba Yaga Laid an Egg. This is a Croatian book. We're into the seas. So let me seize this opportunity to tell you about this book. Anyway, that was a lame pun, sorry. Baba Yaga is an old hag who lives in a house built on chicken legs and eats children. So the vibe has shifted ever so slightly. I love weird books, this is fun. She appears in many forms, as Pupa, a tricksy, cantankerous old woman who keeps their legs tucked into a huge furry boot, as a trio of mischievous elderly women who embark on a trip of a lifetime to a hotel spa, and as a villainous flock of ravens, black hens, and magpies infected with the H5N1 virus. But what story does Baba Yaga have to tell us today? This is a quizzical tale about one of the most pervasive and powerful creatures in all mythology, and an extraordinary yarn of identity, secrets, storytelling, and love. Okay, this is mythology that I don't know about, so I'm very intrigued to find out more. The Metro calls it spellbinding. And this is by Dubravka Ugrasic. The Independent calls it a whirligig of outrageous invention. If you're using the word whirligig on the cover, I probably want to read your book. That is a choice. A choice was made. This sounds bonkers, but in the best way. Like bonkers, complimentary. Weird, strange, bizarre, complimentary. That's always a compliment in my book, or when it comes to books. Now this book is called The Silent Patient. I'm sure lots of you have heard of this one. This is by Alex Michaelides, who is Cypriot. So we have reached Cyprus in our little convoluted tour around Europe. Alicia Berenson lived a seemingly perfect life until one day 6 years ago, when she shot her husband in the head 5 times. Since then, she hasn't spoken a single word. In this book, it's time to find out why. Czechia. This is a book by Milan Kundera. I loved The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I read it last summer. I thought it was absolutely incredible. One of the best books I've ever read. And so when it came to writers from Czechia, I was like, it has to be Milan. So this is the book of laughter and forgetting. Salman Rushdie describes it as a masterpiece. And if Salman Rushdie says that, I believe it. This book is a novel in the form of variations. The various parts follow each other like the various stages of a voyage leading into the interior of a theme, the interior of a thought, the interior of a single unique situation, the understanding of which recedes from my sight into the distance. It is a book about laughter and about forgetting and about Prague and about the angels. I think that's a quote from the book. Milan Kundera always kind of breaks the fourth wall in a way and talks directly to you as the reader. The Book of Laughter and Forgetting is the most secret of Kundera's novels. The new translation is the first to be fully authorized by the author. Okay. It's described as a whirling dance of a book, and you know what? I'm ready to tango. And that means we have reached stack number 2. Okay, so I did order a book from Denmark. However, it somehow got lost in the mail, so instead, this is a book I have actually read. This is The Snow Queen by Hans Christian Andersen. I mean, come on. Surely one of, if not the most famous Danish writers. Hans Christian Andersen was the master of the fairy tale and wrote incredible books, including this one, which is called The Snow Queen, which actually inspired the movie Frozen. So this is the book we have representing Denmark, but this was the book that I ordered. So hopefully that one turns up at a later point. We'll see. For Estonia, I could not find many books that had been translated into English. So if anyone has any recommendations, please leave them in the comment section down below. Same with all of these countries. If there are books from your native country that you think I have to read, please let me know in the comment section down below. But this is Oscar and the Things. It's actually a kid's book, but of course that's still just as important to represent. So I'm glad that we have a children's book in this video too. This is by Andras Kivarak, and this is the description. One summer, when both his parents were away for work, Oscar is sent to the countryside to live with his grandma. A dreary prospect turns into disaster when Oscar realizes he left his mobile phone back at home. What will he do all summer now? Lonely and bored, Oscar crafts a phone out of a block of wood he finds in the shed and uses it to pretend to call things. To his surprise, the things reply. He speaks to a tough-talking iron, a poetizing bin, a bloodthirsty wardrobe, a red balloon that gets tangled in the crown of a birch tree, and many more. Oscar finds himself in high demand, helping the things solve their problems and achieve their dreams. A charming book about the power of the imagination and friendship by Estonia's leading children's writer. Cool. This book is from Finland. It's called The Summer Book by Tove Jansson, and I think this is obviously very seasonal. I think this is a book I should read right now. Maybe I'll turn the camera off and start cracking on this one, but it's described as funny, wise, full of joys and small adventures. This is a book for life. An elderly artist and her 6-year-old granddaughter while away a summer together on a tiny island in the Gulf of Finland. Gradually, the two learn to adjust to each other's fears, whims, and yearnings for independence, and a fierce yet understated love emerges, one that encompasses not only the summer inhabitants, but the island itself, with its mossy rocks, windswept firs, and unpredictable seas. Full of humour and wisdom, the summer book is profoundly life-affirming. It captures much of the author's own experience and spirit in the book, which was her favourite of the novels she wrote for adults, and this is the 50th anniversary edition. So I love that we have a complete mix of kind of modern classics. This one is super modern, it just came out this year. This is representing France. This is by Maud Ventura, and it's called My Husband. I feel like this is one of those books that's like, I support women's rights, I also support women's wrongs. It's described as clever and unsettling, a skillfully manipulated psychological drama. From the outside, she has an enviable life. Stunning looks, 2 healthy children, a house in the suburbs, and most importantly, the perfect husband. After 15 years, she is still besotted with him, but what if her passion isn't reciprocated anymore? What if she has to test him to make sure he still loves her as much as he did when they first met? And what if one day her love goes too far. We will find out when I read this book. I'm so excited about this one. It's an international bestseller, described as totally addictive, a gripping read. I couldn't put it down. I am gonna put it down right now, but temporarily. Now this one also just came out. This is a book from Georgia. It's by Leo Vardiashvili. I gasped, laughed, and wept my way through it, says Khaled Hosseini, who I hold as in very high regard as an author. So if he is supporting this book and putting his weight behind it, I want to read it. Saba's father is missing and the trail leads back to Georgia. It's been 2 decades since Irakli fled his war-torn homeland with 2 young sons who are now grown men. 2 decades since he saw their mother, who stayed so they could all escape. At long last, the city has lured him home, but when Irakli's phone calls stop, a mystery begins. Arriving in the city as escaped zoo animals prowl the streets, Saba picks up the trail of clues. Strange graffiti, bewildering messages transmitted through the radio, pages from his father's unpublished manuscript scattered like breadcrumbs. As the voices of those left behind pull at the edges of his world, Saba will discover that all roads lead back to the past, and to secrets swallowed up by the great forests of Georgia. It is a winding pursuit through the magic and mystery of returning to a lost homeland. Hard by a great forest is a rare, searching tale of home, memory, and sacrifice, of one's family mission to rescue one another and put the past to rest. I love books which contemplate the idea of home, so I think this could end up being a new favourite. We'll see. This is The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, the German writer. This is from Germany, a masterwork unlike any other, a delight, comic and profound, a new form of language, a new way of seeing, says A.S. Byatt. Hans is a perfectly ordinary, if engaging, young man. When he goes to visit his cousin in an exclusive sanatorium in the Swiss Alps, what should have been a 3-week trip turns into a 7-year stay. Hans falls in love and becomes intoxicated with the ideas he hears at the clinic. Ideas which will strain and crack apart a world on the verge of the First World War. It's described as magnificent, a beautiful, feverish account of obsessive love. I love reading about obsessive love. Okay. That is The Magic Mountain, and that is our entry for Germany. This is like the Eurovision book contest. You can probably guess where this one is from. It's called Zorba the Greek. Nikos Kazantzaki's most popular and enduring novel has its origins in the author's own experiences in the 1920s. His swashbuckling hero has legions of fans across the world, and his adventures are as exhilarating and exciting now as they were on first publication in the 1950s. So I feel like this is a character who is going to walk off the page and into your heart. One of the great characters of modern fiction, says TLS. A marvellous evocation of landscape and a sketch of a temperament as validly Greek as Odysseus himself. It is a captivating book. So I feel like this is going to be a masterclass in character creation. That is Zorba the Greek. This is probably the longest title we're going to encounter in any of these videos for the rest of time. It's called A Mountain to the North, A Lake to the South, Paths to the West, A River to the East. It's by Laszlo Krasznahorkai, and this is from Hungary. So if you've ever been Hungary to read a book from that part of the world, you're in luck. The grandson of Prince Genji lives outside of space and time, wandering the grounds of an old monastery in Kyoto, searching for a garden that has long captivated him. The monastery too is timeless, with barely a trace of human presence. This exquisite novel by International Booker Prize winner Laszlo Krasznahorkai, perhaps his most serene and poetic work, describes a search for the unobtainable and the riches to be discovered along the way. As the grandson encounters difficulties in finding the garden, the reader is closely introduced to the construction of the monastery, the geological and biological presences, and generations of tradition. Careful and deliberate, the novel is a reflection of the centuries of discipline, restraints, and conscious living that led to a singular moment of satisfaction and peace. With hypnotic prose and mesmerizing detail, this novel is an unforgettable meditation on nature, life, history, and being. Boom. This is Independent People. This is a book from Iceland. It's by Halldór Laxness. It's a vintage classic. It has that red spine. The greatest Icelandic novel and surely one of the best books of the 20th century, says The Guardian. And this author won the Nobel Prize in Literature. First published in 1946, this is a humane epic novel set in rural Iceland. It's about a sheep farmer determined to make a living from a blighted patch of land. Nothing, not merciless weather, nor his family, will come between him and his goal of financial independence. Only Asta, the child he brings up as his daughter, can pierce his stubborn heart. As she grows up, keen to make her own way in the world, his obstinacy threatens to estrange them forever. The writer has been dubbed the Tolstoy of the North in this magnificent portrait of the eerie Icelandic landscape and one man's dogged struggle for independence. I think I'm going to be obsessed with this. The New York Review of Books says there are good books and then there are great books, and there may be a book that is something still more. This could be the book of your life. That is a great review. Damn, okay, so many books, so little time. I don't even know where to begin. Let me know in the comment section which one you would start with, which one sounds great to you, which one are you gonna be picking up. The next one I'm gonna be literally picking up to show you is The Wren by Anne Enright. This was shortlisted for this year's Women's Prize. That's how it kind of came onto my radar. I love Irish fiction. I love it so much. So many of my favourite books are by Irish authors, and so I'm thinking this could creep into that list of new favourites. I mean, Sally Rooney calls it magnificent. Hello! Do you understand why I wanted to read this book? This is by Anne Enright, who is the Booker Prize winning author. The New York Times describes her as one of the great living writers on the subject of family. So this is the description of The Wren. Nell is a young woman with adventure on her mind. As she sets out into the world, she finds her family history hard to escape. For her mother, Carmel, Nell's leaving home opens a space in her heart, where the turmoil of a lifetime begins to churn. Over them both falls the long shadow of Carmel's famous father, an Irish poet of beautiful words and brutal actions. From our greatest chronicler of family life, The Wren is a story of the love that can unite us and the individual acts that threaten this vital bond. I started to read this one actually. I'm about 100 pages in and it is so poetic and gorgeous. So I think this is going to be making an appearance many, many times on this channel, as Irish fiction often does. One thing I have not represented enough, however, is Italian fiction. This is If on a Winter's Night, a Traveller by Italo Calvino, who is regarded as one of Italy's finest 20th century writers, a creator of brilliantly inventive books that have enchanted readers around the world for many decades, and now it's my turn. It is my turn to be enchanted. It was enchanting to meet you, Italo. You go into a bookshop and buy If on a Winter's Night, a Traveller by Italo Calvino. You like it, but alas, there is a printer's error in your copy. You take it back to the shop and get a replacement, but the replacement seems to be a totally different story. You try to track down the original book you were reading, but end up with a different narrative again. This remarkable novel leads you through many different books, including a detective adventure, a romance, a satire, an erotic story, a diary, and a quest. But the real hero is you, the reader. Okay, I did not know a lot about this book, but I've had it for ages, so this is going to be a must-read for me this summer. And that is our entry for Italy. Okay, it's time for a new stack of books. We have made it to the K's. This book is from Kosovo. It's called My Cat Yugoslavia. It's by Pajtim Statovci, and this is the description. In 1980s Yugoslavia, a young girl named Amin is married off to a man she hardly knows. But soon her country is torn apart by war, and she is forced to flee with her family. Decades later, Amin's son, Bakim, has grown up a social outcast in a country suspicious of foreigners. Aside from casual hookups, his only companion is a pet boa constrictor, until one night in a gay bar, Bakim meets a talking cat. Of course, sure. Again, we love weird books. It is this witty, charming, manipulative creature that starts him on a journey back to Kosovo to confront his demons and make sense of the remarkable, cruel history of his family, and soon he learns that love can be found in the most unexpected of places. A striking work, memorably disconcerting, says The Observer. The New Yorker says it's exquisite, a meditation on exile, dislocation, and loneliness. A brilliantly original and powerful writer, sensitive, subtle, and deeply engaging. A truly extraordinary novel. These are just bangers after bangers, all hits, no misses. This one is called Soviet Milk. This is from Latvia. It's a Latvian bestseller, described by The Guardian as blistering. This is by Ignora Extena, the literary bestseller that took the Baltics by storm, now published for the first time in English. This novel explores the effects of Soviet rule on a single individual. The central character in the story, a nameless woman, tries to follow her calling as a doctor, but then the state steps in. She is deprived first of her professional future, then of her identity, and finally of her relationship with her daughter. Banished to a village in the Latvian countryside, her sense of isolation increases. Will she and her daughter be able to return to Riga, where political change begins to stir? World Literature Today says this is a book so beautiful that you ration the pages to extend it. A book where you miss the characters and you miss the story when you turn the final page is a 5-star from me. So I think Soviet Milk has a lot of potential. That's Latvia. This is a book from Lithuania. It's called I Must Betray You. It's by Ruta Sepetys and was a #1 New York Times bestseller. In a world ruled by fear, who can you trust? Christian lives in a country repressed by a cruel dictator. At 17, he dreams of being free, of studying philosophy and poetry, but everything he does, says, or even thinks is controlled by the state. In this climate of constant suspicion, can he trust his best friend, his girlfriend, or even his family? When the secret police blackmail him, he is faced with an impossible choice. Will he betray those closest to him, or will he resist and risk the lives of those he loves? What price would you pay for freedom? The powerful new thriller, closely based on real events, from the award-winning author of Salt to the Sea. That is I Must Betray You. Very intrigued to read a book kind of about the secret police and not trusting. Award-winning author of Salt to the Sea. That is I Must Betray You. The people closest to you and how that must spin you out. This next book is from Moldova. This is called The Good Life Elsewhere. I love this title so much, and this cover is really, really fun too. It's by Vladimir Lorchenkov and described as a very funny book. It is also a very sad one. Oh, you got me. You got me with that. Extreme emotions on both sides of the coin. Sign me up. Moldovan author Vladimir Lorchenkov tells the story of a group of villagers and their tragicomic efforts against all odds and at any cost to emigrate from Europe's most impoverished nation to Italy for work. This is a book with wild imagination and heartbreaking honesty, grim appraisals alongside optimistic commentary about the nature of human striving. In Lorchenkov's uproarious tale, an Orthodox priest is deserted by his wife for an art-dealing atheist, a mechanic redesigns his tractor for travel by air and sea, and thousands of villagers take to the road on a modern-day religious crusade to make it to the promised land, Italy. A simultaneously hilarious and heartbreaking tale, says Publishers Weekly. Say no more, speak my language. That sounds incredible. This next book is another winner of the International Booker Prize. This won in 2020. It's called Discomfort of Evening. It's by Merrick Lucas Reineveld, who is from the Netherlands. Just to read you these words kind of scattered around the cover. Exhilarating, luminous, shockingly good and classic, electric, beautifully wild, exceptional. I mean, come on, that's a cocktail of praise. That's a cocktail of compliments, if I've ever seen one. 10-year-old Jazz has a unique way of experiencing her universe. The feeling of udder ointment on her skin as protection against harsh farmyard winters. The texture of green warts like capers on migrating toads. The sound of blush words that aren't in the Bible, but when a tragic accident ruptures the family, her curiosity warps into a wild vortex of disturbing fantasies, unlocking a darkness that threatens to derail them all. This sounds wild. It was a debut novel too, and it won the International Booker, so that is incredibly impressive and sounds wacky and strange. And something I would be into. Okay, this is a very classic book. I can't believe I've never read this. This is A Doll's House. It's by Ibsen. This is from Norway, of course. And this is actually a play. Written in 1879 by Norwegian playwright Henrik Ibsen, A Doll's House is a 3-act play about a housewife who becomes disillusioned and dissatisfied with her condescending husband. The play raises universal issues and questions that are applicable to societies worldwide. I feel like so many incredible actors have performed in A Doll's House. It's such a staple. I can't believe I haven't read it yet. And I'm going to be righting my wrongs by reading it. Next, of course, for Portugal, it had to be the poetry of Fernando Pessoa. This is a little anthology of his works. Actually, this edition has his original notebooks with all of his scribblings out and changes that he made and edits alongside the final poem. So I think this is a really amazing edition. I'm very, very grateful to own this. So you can see the original Portuguese right next to the English translation. And Pessoa is one of the most famous poets ever, but specifically the GOAT when it comes to Portuguese writing. So very intrigued to read this collection of his poems. Flights by Olga Tokarczuk, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, and I'm pretty sure this also won the International Booker Prize as well. I've read one of her other books, which is called Drive Your Plough Over the Bones of the Dead. I love that title. This one is a little shorter, just Flights, but this is what it's about. Flights is a novel about travel in the 21st century and human anatomy, broaching life, death, motion, and migration. From the 17th century, we have the story of the Dutch anatomist Philip, who dissected and drew pictures of his own amputated leg. From the 18th century, we have the story of a North African-born slave turned Austrian courtier, stuffed and put on display after his death. In the 19th century, we follow Chopin's heart as it makes the covert journey from Paris to Warsaw. In the present, we have the harrowing story of a young husband whose wife and child mysteriously vanish on a holiday on a Croatian island. I have no idea what all of those things are going to have in common, how that is going to become a book and a story, but I'm intrigued to find out. And this writer is so talented. Her work oozes personality, and I'm looking forward to reading another one. This is a Penguin modern classic right here. This is called Nostalgia, and this is from Romania. This is by Mircea Cărtărescu, one of the great literary voices of Central Europe. Says Olga. Wow, would you look at that? She's literally quoted on the back. We love writers who support writers. That was such a smooth segue. A dreamlike novel of memory and magic, Nostalgia turns the dark world of communist Bucharest into a place of strange entanglements. Here, a man plays increasingly death-defying games of Russian roulette, a child messiah works his magic in the tenements, a young man explores gender boundaries, a woman relives her youth, and an architect becomes obsessed with the sound of his new car horn with unexpected consequences, blending reality and symbolism, time and myth. This is a cult classic masterwork from Romania's most celebrated writer. Gripping, impassioned, and unexpected, says the Los Angeles Times. I feel like this is an education on writers from all around the world who I didn't get to study when I was at university because we studied English literature. And so that just doesn't do justice to the full literary canon in the whole world. And so I'm glad that I'm filling in those gaps now. Okay, Serbia, the Dictionary of the Khazars, a lexicon novel by Milorad Pavic. A national bestseller, Dictionary of the Khazars was cited by the New York Times Book Review as one of the best books of the year. Written in two versions, male and female, both available in Vintage International, I think that's this edition, which are identical save for 17 crucial lines. Dictionary is the imaginary book of knowledge of the Khazars, a people who flourished somewhere beyond Transylvania between the 7th and 9th centuries. Eschewing conventional narrative and plot, this lexicon novel combines the dictionaries of the world's three major religions with entries that leap between past and future, featuring three unruly wise men, a book printed in poison ink, suicide by mirrors, a sect of priests who can infiltrate one's dreams, romances between the living and the dead, and much more. This is going to be very experimental and unique and different. I'm very pumped about this one. And did I say this is a Serbian book? So I've never read a Serbian book before, nor have I read a book from Slovenia. And I've been to Slovenia, it was so beautiful. Now what I try to do is when I travel to a new place, I will read a book from that place while I'm there, both because I think it enhances your experience of the book because you can visualize what it's talking about, it's right in front of you, down to the geography of the place, the landscapes, the food that it's talking about, but also I think it really enlightens your experience of the place. So it's very symbiotic in that sense. But anyway, this is a Slovenian book. It's called Yugoslavia, My Fatherland. It's by Goran Vonovic. When Vladan Googles the name of his father, a former officer of the Yugoslav People's Army, supposedly killed in the war that followed the collapse of Yugoslavia, he unexpectedly discovers a dark family secret. The story, which then unfolds, takes him back to the catastrophic events of 1991, when he first heard the military term deployment. and his idyllic childhood came to a sudden end. 17 years later, Vladan's discovery that he is the son of a fugitive war criminal sends him off on a journey around the Balkans to find his elusive father. On the way, he begins to understand how the falling apart of his family is closely linked with the disintegration of the world they used to live in. The story of this family deals intimately with the tragic fates of the people who managed to avoid the bombs but were unable to escape the war. That is our book from Slovenia. A Heart So White is our entry for Spain. This is by Javier Marias, described by the Times literary supplement as dazzling. I was enthralled, says The Guardian. In the middle of a family lunch, Teresa, just married, goes to the bathroom, unbuttons her blouse, and shoots herself in the heart. What made her kill herself immediately after her honeymoon? Years later, this mystery fascinates the young newlywed Juan, whose father was married to Teresa before he married Juan's mother. Before he married Juan's mother. As Juan edges closer to the truth, he begins to question his own relationships and whether he really wants to know what happens. Haunting and unsettling, A Heart So White is a breathtaking portrayal of two generations, two marriages, and the relentless power of the past, the terrible price of knowledge. That is our entry for Spain, another Penguin modern classic. Fredrik Backman is one of Sweden's greatest exports. I love his writing, I love his humour, I love his style. I read a bunch of his books, including Anxious People, A Man Called Uwe, but this is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. This title is immaculate. Grandpa and Noah are sitting on a bench in a square that keeps getting smaller every day. The square is strange but also familiar, full of the odds and ends that have made up their lives. Grandpa's work desk, the stuffed dragon that Grandpa once gave to Noah, the sweet-smelling hyacinths that Grandma loved to grow in her garden. As they wait together on the bench, they tell jokes and discuss their shared love of mathematics. Grandpa recalls what it was like to fall in love with his wife, what it was like to lose her. She's as real to him now as the first day he met her, but he dreads the day when he won't remember her. Sometimes Grandpa sits on the bench next to Ted, Noah's father. Ted, who never liked maths, prefers writing and playing the guitar, and has waited his entire life for his father to have time for him, to accept him. But in their love of Noah, they have found a common bond. Grandpa, Grandma, Ted and Noah all meet here, in this peculiar space that is growing dimmer and more confusing all the time. And here is where they will have to learn to say goodbye, the scent of hyacinths in the air, with nothing to fear. Fredrik Backman, you will always be famous to me. And to the world. He's an incredible writer. Hermann Hesse with Steppenwolf. He is an author from Switzerland. He also wrote Demian, Siddhartha, which I've spoken about on this channel before. This is described as a gripping and fascinating story of disease in a man's soul. At first sight, Harry seems a respectable, educated man. In reality, he is the Steppenwolf. Wild, strange, alienated from society, and repulsed by the modern age. But as he is drawn into a series of dreamlike and sometimes savage encounters, accompanied by, among others, Mozart and the bewitching Hermione, the misanthropic Holler describes a higher truth and the possibility of happiness. This haunting portrayal of a man who feels he is half human and half wolf becomes a counterculture classic for a disaffected generation. It is also a story of redemption and a modernist masterpiece. This is the first new translation of Steppenwolf for over 80 years, returning to the fresh, authentic language of Hesse's original, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. Wow, 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 wow. That's all I can say about that. This book is from Turkey. It's called Madonna in a Fur Coat, and it's by Sabahattin Ali, the magical novel about a Turkish man who falls in love with an artist in 1920s Berlin, recreates a vanished era, and dramatizes a doomed relationship with verve, depth, and poignancy. The result is a miniature masterpiece, and she is a slim thing. She's got her summer body ready. I love the title, Madonna in a Fur Coat. So good. A tale of young love and disenchantment, of missed opportunities and passion's elusive, flickering flame. Wow, even the blurb is poetic and beautiful. I need to read this. Okay, we're very nearly at the end, but this is Ukraine. Andrei Kurkov, this is Grey Bees. Such an amazing Ukrainian writer. I absolutely love his work. Thanks to the war of sporadic violence and constant propaganda that has been dragging on for years, only 2 villagers remain. Retired safety inspector turned beekeeper Sergei and Pashka, his old enemy from his school days. With little food and no electricity, under the ever-present threat of bombardment, their one remaining comfort is his bees. As spring approaches, he knows he must take them far from the grey zone so that they can collect their pollen in peace. This simple mission on their behalf introduces him to combatants and civilians on both sides of the battle lines: loyalists, separatists, Russian occupiers, and Crimean Tatars. Wherever he goes, his childlike simplicity and strong moral compass disarm everyone he meets. But could he be manipulated to serve as an unworthy cause, spelling disaster for him, his bees, and his country? He's described as a Ukrainian Murakami. This sounds like an absolute must-read. And read it, I must. And now, finally, this is quite neat, but the final one is the UK, so coming back to my own homeland. I chose this book by David Nicholls. I actually just finished reading it, but it felt very quintessentially British to me, so this is my offering to you from my own country. So I'm hoping if you are feeling incredibly generous, you will leave a comment in the comment section down below sharing your favourite book from your native country or from another country that you just really, really loved and you think that I should read and spotlight in the next videos. But my offering to you is You Are Here by David Nicholls. This feels the humour feels very quintessentially British to me. It's witty, it's joyful, it's about these two people who do a coast-to-coast walk from Cumbria to Yorkshire, and in amongst this vast landscape, this sweeping landscape of the hills, they have time to just talk and get to know each other and reminisce on memories from their lives. And one loves walking, one hates walking, they are experiencing intense weather conditions and all sorts of different things happen, and you get to experience them forming a friendship, but also maybe something a little bit more. It's complicated, they miscommunicate, but I love this book. And I think it's a great summer read for this year. So that is You Are Here by David Nicholls. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that you found some amazing recommendations from places that you may not have thought to look before. As I'm sure you can tell, I am extremely excited to read these books and to start making a dent in this new reading list that I now have. Like I said, translator information is in the description box. I'll also be making videos on books from Asia, from Africa, from the Americas, etc. So make sure you subscribe to catch those videos. Leave your recommendations in the comment section down below. For now, all the best. Stay in touch, have the most wonderful day, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye!